So they definitely won for more exciting PowerPoints, but with the pictures and everything. But yes, so I'm Dr. Jez, and I come to you as a researcher, but also as a practitioner. And the reason I ended up with a doctorate was because I continued to grow as a teacher and want to know more. And one of the things that I feel is my duty as someone who's gone through and learned all of the research is now to bring that information and bring it to teachers and bring it to schools, which is what brought me here. So my agenda is I want to go over the stakeholders, because I think that's a really important issue when we're talking about multilingualism and biliteracy. I also want to talk about the South Africa and diverse learners, because that's my area of specialty. What the research is saying, and then bring it to best practice. First of all, the stakeholders. You know, I always, and I speak with my hands, so you're going to see my hands up and moving. But you always have to think, what is the point of education? And really where we're going with education is to take care of our country, to take care of our world. And nowadays, education and life has become much more global. I'm here, for goodness sakes. But here in South Africa, you actually go, okay, you've got your country, and then each province has kind of a different idea, and then each district within that. And that brings and then it goes down to the schools, and then the teachers, and the different educators within the school, and then finally to the students. And then I imagine it kind of like a funnel coming in and then going back out to the families and the communities. Now you might notice I did families in quotes, and that's because I have also worked in urban areas and with diverse learners and with marginalized groups. And I quickly learned that family does not mean mom and dad, biological mom and dad, but family is your support system that you have. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing and something we need to keep in mind when we're talking also about literacy, because it's the support system that takes you through these different ideas. So just to kind of put that in the frame of mind as I go through. So as we've spoken about, there's 11 official languages here in South Africa, but in my experience here in the research, actually even with your matric exam, there's 2 languages that it's given in, English and Afrikaans, yeah. And so that actually, when I heard that statistic or that information, it made me think like, oh, okay, so you have an Afrikaans student who goes in to take matric, and they can decide whether they take it in English or Afrikaans. And the Afrikaans is going to be the language that that's easily accessible to them. And then they take it. They it's like they have an edge compared to these students that are, growing up with the Zulu language or Sepedi, and I'm sorry if I say these incorrectly, but you know, and that affected in my head. One of the areas with my research, in my writing and my professional developments that I do is around equality versus equity. And equality is that everyone gets the same thing. Equity is the idea that people get what they need, and that they have equal chances and equity within their school system. And so when I heard that, I thought, okay, that might be something South Africa looks at. But then I was, also another bit of information that I found is in 2000 or 2001, you had 1 million students walk in the door to start school. And in 2011, you had 500,000 or maybe more that graduated and were able to pass matric. And out of those 500,000, 337,000 actually scored high enough to get into university. And then I've been at the universities. I have been to UJ and then University of the Western Cape and University of Zululand in the last few months. And one of the things that I've come across is that I have students who are very accessible to the language, and when I get up and I present, I have an accent, but they're able to hear it. And then I have the other students that I can tell are processing and struggling. So we have the university that's in English and some that are in Afrikaans as well. And then in the employment sector. So what's the point of educating people so that they can then provide, whether it's taxes or at least taking care of themselves for our country, our beautiful country. And in a lot of the jobs, you need to have a high level of literacy, you need a high level of mathematics, and that's not going to come unless you've been prepared well enough. So then I go back to the teachers. And that is the literacy. That's learning to read and write, learning to think critically, learning to express your understanding of a topic. And that we need to prepare our learners so that they have these literacy skills, so that they're able to show their knowledge. Because one of the things I've also noticed is these university students and teachers who are coming to me after I've spoken, they actually are, and principals, by the way, all these educators are saying, yes, we want the knowledge. They want it. I heard, many people have said, oh, what are you doing? And when I answer, they say, oh, educators, the teachers are so lazy in this country. And I have not seen it. I have seen teachers and educators and students who are saying, what should we do? How can we get support? And so that is one of the big ideas that I want to also say. We've got literacy skills, but we also need the skills to teach these literacy skills. So, and then the final thing is, I noticed that you can actually do Google Scholar, and you can find scholarly research in Afrikaans and English, but I have yet to find, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I haven't found a good body in the 9 other African languages here in South Africa. And so is there a way to get these ideas, these academic ideas, published in other languages so that you can also, as that graph showed, bring up the language skills for all participants within the country? So I won't go too much into this because hopefully you know your constitution, but I did read the whole thing. And I also read white paper number 6. Everyone, yes, you know white paper number 6. Is there anyone that I should just kind of mention it to? Okay. If you're too shy, then that's okay. You can quickly read the slide. But the idea that you're going to educate all students. And all students comes from, a student who is underprivileged because of social issues, a student who has struggled maybe with a disability, although that, according to white paper, that term is kind of going out the door here, but with maybe a processing issue or some other physical issue, and then also the language issues. And I want you all to do this really quick activity. I want you to think about something that you did last week, and then I want you to think of a sentence to tell me, but you can't use the letter R, S, T, or E. No words with any of those letters, R, S, T, or E. And I'll give you a second. Just one small sentence. It can be three words. Does everyone have one? Do you see how hard that is? You have to search for words out of your vocabulary that then fit that. And what you've done is you've taken your big vocabulary, your academic vocabulary from this group, and you've cut it in half, and then you've cut it a little bit more as you're trying to come up with an idea. Because I put two, I don't know what the word is, but 2 constructs on it, okay? Thank you. And so all of that takes more processing, more time to kind of digest and go with it and come up with an answer. So, all right, so what does the research say? And they've gone over quite a bit of the research, so I won't spend too much time. But if one of the things is, yes, we have bilingual education and things like that. But if you exit a language program too quickly, then then there's evidence that leads to school failure. So say that you're being taught in Zulu and you haven't actually gotten a good grasp of Zulu, then you're going to struggle when you're asked to move on to English and add another language. That there is definitely an additive value of being bilingual or multilingual. That student success, well, I went into this as well, that student success means doing well in education, doing well in employment. And that is ultimately our goals as educators. And then if you promote literacy, you promote learning, as we've heard as well today. And high quality instruction, now understand I'm from the US, so a lot of what I look at is English language pedagogy. So how to teach English to people who speak different languages. But they found that if you teach high quality instruction to a group that is English language learners and regular English learners, that actually everybody benefits. Everyone learns with high quality instruction. And that if you clarify and develop ideas in your mother tongue, you can aid learners and then also preserve the language. And I think that that's a topic that I've heard a lot about here as well, is preserving these beautiful languages. I love the fact that I found out that instead of saying black, you say, the color of night. I think that's beautiful. So, all right. So before you have best practice, you have to create an environment for learning. So one of the big parts, or most important parts that I try to teach teachers about is being empowered. And it's not just about feeling empowered as a teacher, but empowering our students as learners by validating the culture and the language that they're coming from, and also empowering our families. There's, when we bring books into the house and we show people how to use them, they get read. And people and learners start growing and their minds start expanding. People actually gave my mother a hard time because they said she always talked to us like adults. And we were never going to learn our place if she talked to us like that. But what happened is we were able to get the vocabulary. So when we went into the schools, we said, oh, excuse me, and my nieces and nephews do this, by the way. Excuse me, I'm really confused about all this information. It kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, or whatever it is. I mean, the way that they're 6 years old and speaking that way. But they've been given a gift. They can describe, what their experience is. So if we empower all of the different stakeholders that these students encounter, then we will do better with our literacy. Provide resources in all languages. That's another thing. I've seen a lot of children's books, foundation phase books in different languages. And then it kind of stops. And I've been to a few bookstores to kind of do this. It's informal research, but it's still there. And that's a concern to me too. We want everyone to be able to grow and build on their knowledge. You don't give the academic language until a higher level of book. And so we need to make sure that we're supporting all of our learners. And continued effort. One of the things they say about professional development is that you can have one seminar, but if you don't make sure that this is being implemented and supporting it around it, then nothing will happen. So you can send a book home one time to a family and it may not be read. But if you, as we mentioned before, 15 minutes a day, I think I saw both of your presentations. So that type of accountability gives the framework for learning and continuing with the growth. And then, are we teaching this was another issue that's been coming up in the different areas. So, with the exception of Zululand, where there was a lot of Zulu. But what is the mother tongue of our children, our teachers, and our families? What are they really hearing? Are they hearing a mixture, or are they actually hearing the true language that is there? So, and the safe environment. People need to have a safe environment to also learn and play with language and grow from language. And a lot of our schools and when I say our, I mean South Africa, I'm here. But if we are having schools that, on the radio today, around the strikes I did hear, they don't have toilets in some schools, they don't have enough textbooks, and all of those things are going to pull away from our ability to really work with these students in a useful way. So the best practice. And I'll just show you real quick. I've got 2 slides of best practice. I'm not going to go over all of these. You're welcome. But I do have them up here, and I'm going to highlight a few of them. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because going into these classrooms and going into the universities and talking with teachers and principals, I keep hearing the idea that we have, the actual, what's going on in the classrooms is not necessarily clear lesson planning. And I think that that's one of the areas where teachers are actually saying, yes, I have to teach this, or I need to get through this, or the department's saying this, or my district, or my principal, and they're feeling overwhelmed and unsupported in how how to actually get through the language, the literacy, the math, and still, you know, have time to correct papers, I guess. But explicit instruction is talked about a lot in teaching training programs. But then how to bring that home in explicitly teaching skills like phonemic awareness and phonics, and how it relates to more than one language. Supplementary materials. Once again, if you don't have the books in multiple languages and yet you're saying you can learn in your original, your mother tongue, but then you don't have the support materials to support that as well, then it's, I don't want to say a moot point, but it's definitely watered down. I'm going to skip to frequent opportunities for interaction and elaboration of ideas. And most teachers teach how they were taught, which for quite a few of us was someone stood up just like I am now, and then they spoke or wrote notes on the board and everybody copied. And what we found in educational research is that that's not the best way that people learn. And another reason for doing that type of instruction, where someone stands up and then everybody else does, you know, that is part of explicit instruction. I do, we do, you do, and then we assess. So there is a basis for that, but not all the time. And we don't, and oftentimes as educators, and I have been one of these people as well, we don't give enough time for interaction, because we want to get through the material, or we want to get through the idea and make sure that everybody knows all these things. So taking that time to do, you know, the whole group, so me standing here presenting to you, but also the small group and the pairs and the individual, and having the individual come up and speak in front of the whole group. And having that practice, because that's actually the practice that will carry them on through their lives as well. And it's also a wonderful way, especially small groups, for allowing students who are not as strong in a language to be able to express their ideas, process their ideas, and then let everybody else know. And it slows down the learning sometimes, but it's very, very powerful. Wait time. As teachers, you know, we're in a hurry. And so oftentimes if we just do something like wait a minute for the person to process, and then come up with the idea, and then give the feedback, then that is a very effective way to teach as well. So, and then hands-on activities. Integrating various language skills, so being, you know, we were talking earlier about how different languages have different syntax, and you have to be able to process and realize the connection between the multiple languages so that you can actually develop your own language, and the hopefully, or not hopefully, but possibly English as well, because that's kind of the money language worldwide. Vocabulary development has been gone over today. And student engagement. You know, I always was frustrated because my students in San Francisco, so I work with what we call marginalized, culturally and linguistically diverse students with disabilities. So that's a mouthful. But they actually would complain because all they wanted to read was urban novels. And so I had to engage my students into reading Romeo and Juliet, which was not always easy until you come up with creative ways to help them get into that. And so part of our job as educators is bridging the what is in the literary world to something that's relevant for our students. And scaffolding, of course, because I'm a special educator, you know, making sure that you're meeting the needs and the abilities and the levels of your students, rather than just going through and teaching one lesson to everybody and assuming that if they get it right, they move on. If they don't, we move on. So there. And just the 3 final thoughts that I want to leave you with, because you know 3 is the magic number. It's all stakeholders benefit from the energy put into good education. The country will go up in their numbers, but I think one of the last statistics that I looked at, South Africa was one of the lowest in the entire continent of Africa for education. and I've been to a few African countries. I've been to Ghana, Ethiopia, Cameroon, and Morocco. And when I came here, of course I did stay at Santon first, I was shocked at how life was here, the infrastructure and everything like that. So it was shocking to me even more to find out that it was one of the countries that's really struggling with education. To really think about this equality versus equity issue. And I don't have the answer to it, but I think if more educators are really letting that kind of sit in their heart, then hopefully we can come up with some solutions. And then also best practice equals best results. If we start encouraging teachers and learners on how to learn and grow within the classroom and within their literacy, then we will have better results. And then I did my best to cover all the languages I could find online. So thank you very much.